Hey guys, welcome or welcome back. Tisha here, back for another chapter reading of Shattered Dreams. Go ahead and do me a favor and hit the like button as we begin. Hopefully, I can get a little bit of reading in here, especially because you'll only be hearing from me with the book 2 times this week, and because the kids are outside and so is the grounds crew. So let's go ahead and begin. Stephen was now 10 months old, and I had been enjoying a glorious, unexpected hiatus from my procreative duties. I couldn't explain it, except that Verlin had been working away from home a lot. I just figured God really did know how much we could stand at any one time, and I was extremely grateful. Still, my skirt had been fitting a little tighter, so I put myself on a diet. I was already behind my opposition on this score. Lucy was a size 10, Charlotte was a 12, and I was a 14. I couldn't risk letting myself get fat. Whew, the things that we as women do to ourselves. Babies change your body. And at this point, she's had a lot of them. And her son is 10 months. It takes time to bounce back, but I get it. I was relaxing on my bed one evening, talking to Verlin, when all at once I felt that old familiar flutter in my tummy. I didn't want it to be true, but I knew there was no other reason to have butterflies in my stomach. I told Verlin that I thought I might be pregnant again. I better go to Casas tomorrow for a checkup. You'll just feel silly, he said, getting up to go. I think all you felt is gas. Since I had been delivering babies myself, my attitude toward doctors' examinations had drastically changed. Being more at ease now, I went quite voluntarily to see Dr. Hatch. He asked what he could do for me this time. I've gained a little weight. I wonder if it was possible that I may be pregnant. When was your last period, he asked, preparing the examination table. I quit nursing 5 months ago. I haven't had one since my baby was born. Get up on the table. He felt around my pelvic bone, pushing hard and kneading my stomach. I'd say you're about 4 months along, he announced, helping me down. She gets absolutely no breaks. You sitting here talking about the joys of not having to procreate when you're pregnant yet again. So she's thinking she needs to go on a diet because she's put on weight when her weight is yet another baby. Poor girl. Poor girl. Darn. Then why don't I have morning sickness, I asked. Oh, sometimes you do and other times you don't. Your baby is due between Christmas and New Year's. Verlin was elated. This would be his 13th child, and he was still a young man. His dream of siring countless descendants to populate his future kingdom was coming true. That's what it's all about. Some of these men don't really love their children. They just know that the children is a part of their message. So the more that they have, the better it makes them look. I don't know if it was the pregnancy itself or my disappointment about being pregnant, but I woke up the next morning violently sick. Verlin was disgusted when I jumped up grabbing for the pot from under the bed, but I missed and puked in all directions. Hey, cut that out. It's all in your head, he informed me. Why do men always feel like they know everything about women? Even if it was something that was in her head, obviously something made her stomach upset. Well, it may have been all in my head, but it's all over the floor now, I replied. Being pregnant again rendered my chores more difficult, but I made the best of it. I've been cooking on a wood stove, which also provided our only heat. At night, when my baby cried out for his feeding, I light the kerosene lamp, holding the milk in an enamel cup over the flame to warm it. The cup would get all black with soot, but that was easier than making fire in the stove. Since we now had windows but no real heat, On cold winter nights, I'd wrap blankets around the kids' bodies, pinning them under their arms so that they wouldn't kick off the covers and freeze. Every evening, I put my round galvanized tub on the kitchen table to bathe the children. I would put one in at a time, scrubbing them clean. I pulled their foamy hair up into combs like roosters crowing. "Urr, urr, urr." We loved to play and giggle through it all. One evening, I finished bathing and rinsing my kids off with fresh water. My 3-year-old nephew, Joel Johnson, stood watching the whole process. When he saw I was through with the others, he started to undress himself. So I thought, what the heck? His mother will be glad if I bathed him too. I stuck him in the tub and was just rinsing him off with clean water when my 6-year-old niece, Sylvia Esther, came in. She looked surprised. "Aunt Irene, how come you're bathing him? He's not your kid," she said defiantly. I threw a towel around Joel's wet body and stood him over the edge of the table. As I briskly dried him, I answered, "Well, honey, he was so dirty, I had to bathe him, so I know who to send him home to." Stephen was 15 months old when Brent was born on December 28th, 1959. Brent was a darling child who came to us with one blue eye and one brown eye. I know that it's something with the H. I can't think of the condition, but I know someone who has a green one and a blue one. Unfortunately, I wasn't in the mood for another child. I was sad enough about it even before my postpartum blues set in. My sadness turned into an ongoing depression. Lucy faithfully came around to comfort me, rubbing my feet and back at night so I could calm down and sleep. I began to feel a deep gratitude for Lucy. She was quiet, a gentle woman with a servant's heart. She was also humble and unassuming, the least likely of the three of us to demand her fair share. As time went by and Verlin's already thin resources were spread even thinner, this meant she became increasingly neglected. Interesting, because when she first came into the family, I didn't like Lucy. Gotta be honest, I didn't like Lucy. But seeing as to how she's saying that Lucy had been there for her, and then the way that she acted sometimes towards Lucy, Lucy's not as bad as maybe I thought she was. And she does seem to somewhat care about her sister wife. I remember one time when Verlin was leaving town for 3 months, and he went around and individually explained to us how very tight things were for him at the moment. Then he asked us each what was the least we could get by on while he was away. He refused to tell any of us what the others had said, but we compared notes afterward. Charlotte had demanded $200. I'd asked for $100, and poor compliant Lucy had offered to live off nothing at all. Verlin took her up on it. "You mean to tell me he didn't give her anything?" "Charlotte wants wants $200. Give her a little less than that, so you can at least give her something." It don't sound right. When I found that out, I shared my allowance with her. Good. Lucy and I spent most of our days together, tending and feeding our kids, sewing clothes, but mostly just helping each other survive. As determined as I had not been to, I found I even loved her. Miraculously, she'd forgiven me for all my jealous antics. Sweet and calm, she never tried to outdo any of her sister wives. She tried to teach me to relax and not fight life, but I wasn't the complacent type. I longed to stretch my wings and soar to new heights. Instead, I seemed to be bogging down deeper and deeper. During the 6 years of my marriage, I'd always been frank with Verlin. I spent hours bearing my heart and soul to him. He knew my inner conflict, and he was deeply saddened by what he saw and heard. Using scriptures and husbandly advice, he tried to inspire me to place my hope in my eternal reward. "You may not be happy in this situation, but hang in there," he urged. Be faithful, and when you die, you'll find that peace and eternal love you're aching for. I wanted love now. Besides, those promises don't make much sense to me. I said, if I'm obedient and sacrifice, having all the children I possibly can, if I'm good and patient, you say I'll receive a great reward in eternity? I can look forward to having even more sister wives, to being pregnant and popping out kids like popcorn forever and ever. You call that a reward? Yeah, that's not a reward. That sounds like punishment. Not the kids part. Kids are a blessing. But it makes it sound like the only thing that these women are good for at this point is procreation, is making more and more babies for their kingdom. It just doesn't entice me at all anymore. If this is a preview of what I'll have for eternity, they can stop the show right now. Irene, of course you're not serious. You're just upset. For heaven's sake, you don't mean all this. Roland looked concerned. I think all you need is a change. You can go with me on my next trip to the States. In the next breath, he had to spoil it. He didn't want me getting any ideas about pulling out on him. So he insisted I leave all the children home except the baby. He went on to remind me that if I ever left him, the kids would belong to him. They always threaten these women with stuff like that, and it's not right. In May, I accompanied Verlin to Vegas as promised. From there, I took the bus to Salt Lake City by myself. I had a good long visit with my mother. For 2 weeks. On the way back to Mexico with friends, however, I became extremely ill. Shortly after my arrival, a burning fever sent me into delirium. Lucy cared for me and for my children as well. She coaxed me to drink herbal teas and to submit to other home remedies. But the days passed and I grew worse. I kept calling Verlin's name over and over in my mind. Why was he always gone when I needed him? My dear friend Betty had been off on a trip to the States when she and her husband Harold got home and saw my condition. They were so shocked they immediately took action. Betty held the door wide open while Harold carried my frail body to the car. They rushed me to the hospital in Casas. I was badly dehydrated. Worse, I needed a blood transfusion. I was in critical condition with typhoid fever, which the Mexican government sent someone around giving the vaccines. I refused on religious grounds. Consequently, I was the only one at the ranch who contracted it, thank God. Dr. Hatch drew blood from a sister-in-law of mine for my first blood transfusion, but he ordered Harold to immediately find someone else that could donate more. There was no time to waste. My neighbor, Mario, offered to donate, and to the doctor's relief, his blood was a match. When it was over, he leaned over and whispered to me, "This ain't only gonna save your life, it's gonna give you new life. We Mexicans are hot-blooded. Verlin better watch out." So, you the one who told on her, and now that's the advice that you're gonna give her. Got it. Still, despite 3 blood transfusions, my life seemed to be ebbing away. Charlotte and Lucy sent word to Verlin, who was working in Las Vegas. They told him to cancel his commitments and come home immediately. It was urgent. I was hemorrhaging from the bowels, and they didn't expect me to live. With apprehensive strides, Verlin entered my hospital room. He was relieved to find me still alive, but so shocked at the havoc the illness inflicted on me. He sat beside my bed and wept. My once beautiful 23-year-old body was now just a bony frame. He buried his face in my hands, sobbing. I lived in fear all the way home, imagining that you already be buried. Mexican law required the dead to be buried within 24 hours. I promised myself He hid his face, crying so hard he couldn't finish his sentence. I guess that he cares about her, And some of you all have said it in the comment section, but I just wonder to what degree. I don't know. We'll keep going. I dig you up and tell you goodbye. I had no idea he felt so deeply about me. I was racked with guilt. He did love me, so why wasn't I happy? Somehow I fought off death, but the doctor warned Verlin it would be weeks, if not months, before I'd be completely well. He prescribed quiet, bed rest, strained foods, and above all, no stress. After I spent 2 weeks in the hospital, he took me home, but it was too soon. 2 more days of vomiting and high fever convinced them to readmit me for another week. Dr. Hatch thought maybe I lost my will to live. I would need love and encouragement if I was going to pull through. Verlin did his best. When he took me home the second time, it was to a new 2-room house he bought for me a block away from both of the other wives. The kitchen in this house was plastered, and the cement floors in the 2 rooms were not rough like the ones I'd put up with in my other houses. Verlin stopped briefly in the kitchen with me in his arms to show me the apartment-sized gas range he bought in Casas, especially for me, and then installed himself. I was so weak and sick, I didn't give him all the praise he deserved. But after 5 years of cooking on a wood stove with no oven, deep down, I was most grateful for the gift. He allowed me a few minutes with my kids and then put me to bed so I would have complete rest. The virus had taken its toll on me. I had lost 53 pounds. Wow. I was too weak even to care for myself, much less anyone else. For the next month, Lucy took on all of my responsibilities. She fed and loved my 4 children, keeping them at her little 2-room house so I could recuperate. Food was tasteless to me, but Lucy and Verlin coaxed me to eat. The only food I wanted was string potatoes and carrots. I gained a pound or 2, but when I tried to get up, I fainted. After that, I restricted myself to sitting up in bed a little each day. Finally, Lucy helped me out of the bed so I could take a few steps. But to my surprise, I had forgotten how to walk. My legs wouldn't obey my mind. I would swing them about as I stumbled around. This girl has really gone through a lot. A week later, bored as I could be of my own 4 walls, I convinced Verlin to help me walk the block to Lucy's. I was desperate for my children and felt guilty about not being able to care for them. Verlin told me it was too far for me to try and walk, but I insisted. He supported me as my legs flopped in all directions. Slowly, he guided me towards Lucy's house. If you're too tired to walk the whole block, I'll take you back, he cautioned. I refused to give up, forcing myself to take more steps. When we finally got to Lucy's gate, Verlin was going to release his hold on me long enough to lift the wired hoop over the post. He steadied me as he tried opening it. When he momentarily let me loose, my legs buckled instantly beneath me. He caught me just before I hit the ground. Then he carried me in his arms all the way back to the house. Oh boy. By August, Verlin was back in Vegas, and I was improving, though I was not yet back to normal. Still, I felt alive enough that I wanted to celebrate when Verlin came home for a spell. I pleaded with him to make love to me. The doctor said you mustn't get pregnant for a year at least or you may die. Only 2 months had gone by. Well, at least I'll die happy, I joked. I suggested some form of birth control when Verlin refused. I threatened divorce. I figured if God knew my circumstances, he'd make allowances for me. Was I to abstain for another whole year? I'd done that once, and heavenly rewards or not, I swore I'd never do it again. Dr. Hatch emphasized I was to have absolutely no stress. I knew I was causing undue strain on us both with my pleas and threats. Instead of consenting to a divorce, Verlin gave in, very tentatively just this once. As before, he made me agree to take responsibility for it before God and man. That night, much to my chagrin, we conceived our sixth child. I guess Verlin don't know how to pull out. I shouldn't have said that. But every time she gets pregnant, you're told don't conceive for at least a year. And because they don't believe in certain methods and you don't believe in birth control, any form it seems, you're going to go ahead, do it, and she's going to get pregnant. Chapter 22. My sister-in-law, Flora, who was Alma's second wife, asked me to come to her house to fix the tension on her sewing machine. Now 1-year-old Brent needed to go down for a nap. When I left, 5-year-old Donna was bouncing him on the bed, trying to get him to sleep. I told her she could follow me as he fell asleep. I wasn't halfway down the block row when she came running after me. Go back, stay with Brent. Don't come until you're sure he's asleep, I said. He is, Mama, she insisted. So I waited for her to catch up. I oiled Flora's machine and cleaned the metal bobbin case with a chicken feather I brought from my coop. In less than 15 minutes, I adjusted the tension and left it running like a top. She thanked me and Donna, and I headed for home. When I stopped briefly to get the mail, there was a letter from Verlin. I tore it open and read it as I hurried home. Dear Irene, I worry about the kids. Please watch them extra careful for me. I quickened my step as I continued to read. I tiptoed into my room to check on Brent, but he wasn't on the bed. I looked under it, then in the closet. I began to panic. Running outside, Brent, I called. Brentsy, where are you? I ran to Lucy's, but she hadn't seen him. When she saw my concern, she joined in the search. When Charlotte heard my frantic calls, she got alarmed. He wasn't at her place either. We searched, called, looked in the corrals and ditches. I ran through the mesquites and down the cow trails to the alfalfa field. Maybe by some slim chance he'd gotten into the pastures. He hadn't. Our hunt became more intense as most of the town, about 20 adults, had now joined in the search team. We looked in every hole, lifted every lid, and scoured the landscape. I was 6 months pregnant at the time, and my stomach ached from all the running. After 45 minutes, I was worn out and breathless, but I couldn't stop. We found no sign of him. Word spread. Mexican neighbors from across the highway had joined in the search. Everyone was hunting for my missing toddler, but we had no clue of his whereabouts. I don't understand. I get that these women have all these things going on, but this isn't the first time something happened when she wasn't around for her child and she was doing something else. The other baby ended up in the irrigation ditch. So I just hope that this one turns out okay, just like the other one, because these things get, like, my nerves are going. I racked my mind to think of any place we hadn't checked 2 or 3 times already. The wells. There were 3 open wells we used for irrigation, each of them 14 feet in diameter. I didn't want to consider the possibility, but there was nowhere else he could be. I reasoned that if he was in one, his plastic baby bottle should be floating on top of the water. I knew Brent had taken it with him because it was no longer in the house. I headed for the well that was closest to the highway. Verlin's mentally ill brother Ben followed close behind me, saying, "The Spirit of the Lord told me you find your baby floating in the second well." Oh my goodness. I cringed, picking up speed. I knew Ben's revelations were always false. I hoped to God this one was too. I stopped at the well and forced myself to look in. The water was clear and still, no floating bottle. A crowd gathered. I was told then the men already checked the 3 wells with long poles several times and found nothing. During all these hours, I cried out to God, "Let me find him, Lord. Even if he's dead, let me find him." Nothing showed up. No bottle, no body, nothing. The exhausting search went on for 9 hours before darkness caused most of the crowd to give up and go home. 9 hours? And they're still trying to look for this baby. A few close friends milled around, wondering what else they could do as they tried to comfort me. I was hysterical. I could not allow my darling child to be left alone all night. What if coyotes ate his little body? That I might not ever find out what happened to him. On my way back home, I tried to search the cow pastures one last time. Weeping with uncontrollable grief, I waddled through the darkness, bumping into mesquites and weeds along the way. Feeling too faint to walk any longer, I stopped and pleaded with God, Heavenly Father, please, please let me find him. Just then, I thought I heard voices in the distance. I tried to quiet my agitated breathing. Then I held my hand over my pounding heart and listened. We found him! We found him! Came the relieved cries through the darkness. Hope spurred my weary body on. I could see the crowd gathered at the house. Someone was waving a flashlight. I'm not prepared for this, God, I said out loud. Help me endure whatever it is. I approached the crowd, ready to hear that they found him dead. He's okay, Irene. Thank God. Lord, goodness gracious. Whew, he's okay, Charlotte yelled. Then she shoved Brent's shivering little body into my arms. I wept without shame. God answered my prayers after 9 grueling hours. I sobbed. Brent pouted me with his empty baby bottle. Mock, Mama, mock. He tried to lift my hand. Horsey, Mama, horsey. That was when I saw the 2 11-year-old boys standing alongside us, almost in tears. Both boys were named Kimball. They'd been severely scolded by their parents, then ordered to give me their apologies. We're sorry, they said in unison. Angry, I asked, what happened? We were in our cart. The horse was trotting up the lane toward the main road. We saw Brent going in the same direction. He said, Mommy, bus. So we figured you going to town, and he was trying to follow you. We thought he'd have a good time riding around with us, so we took him to El Valley, V-A-L-L-E, hoping to find you. Immediately, I forgave them. Lucy and Charlotte helped me into the house, where I fell exhausted onto the bed. I held Brent in my arms all night, unable to sleep after the prolonged torment of not knowing where he was. Feeling the kick of my unborn child, I hope I hadn't exhausted him too. Y'all, each time a wife was expecting a baby, Verlin would buy 2 pieces of cloth for maternity outfits. He wanted to do something special for me this time because he missed my wedding anniversary. Instead of the allotted 2, he lovingly bought me 3 pieces as a belated anniversary gift. When I saw the cloth, I had to fight back tears, as they wouldn't have been tears of joy or tenderness. To put it simply, the lavender material with huge yellow and purple tulips belonged on a couch, not draped across my protruding stomach. Verlin couldn't imagine that I thought it wasn't suitable. Why he picked it out himself. The lovely flowers reminded me of you, he said. I didn't press the point so he wouldn't think I was ungrateful. When I finished the maternity dress out of the material, I walked up to my friend Betty's. She stared at me in disbelief, then laughed aloud. My God, Irene, where did you get that awful dress? Can you believe this? I said, finally giving into those tears. It's my anniversary present. Then I lightened up. One good thing about being pregnant, Betty, is that I'm gaining my weight back after losing so much from the virus, from the typhoid, typhoid. You know I have an aversion to maternity clothes. I guess I better get used to them, though, because I'll be having babies throughout all eternity. I laughed. I've decided instead of maternity clothes, I'll call them eternity clothes. I promised Donna, who was almost 6, that our new baby would be a girl. Figuring the odds were very much in favor of my little fib, I told her God never sends more than 3 kids in a row of the same sex. We talked and planned about her lovely baby sister. I told her about Leah's death and explained how death came upon humanity. I assured her God was good and that when he gave us another darling girl, it could be hers. On Saturday, she shouldn't have made that promise, because if you don't know what it is and you told her it's going to be a girl and it's going to be a boy, it's a problem. On Saturday, May 14th at 10 o'clock a.m., I gave birth in Lucy's 2-room house to a baby boy. He was the most beautiful child I ever seen. I named him Kalen Douglas. The other boys, Andre, Stephen, and Brent, joyously passed the tiny new arrival around. Donna sat silently on the edge of the bed with her bottom lip poked out. Lucy took the 3 little boys back to my house. She left Donna with me where she could finish pouting. Donna, I began apologetically. Mommy's so sorry that it wasn't a girl. I really thought it would be. She didn't move. Her bottom lip stuck out even further. The baby is so cute, I said. I'll still give him to you. He can be all yours if you'll just be happy. I don't want him. She burst out crying. I'm so damn mad at Adam and Eve. I was shocked she even remembered who they were. Trying not to laugh, I said, why are you mad at them? She cried all the harder. If they hadn't gone to the garden and eaten those damn peaches, we'd still have our baby Leah. Oh. Oh, man. So she's saying because of sin, the baby's gone. I try not, all of that, when it comes to that stuff, is beyond my comprehension. Oh, okay, y'all. This is the last one. I try not to go there. Excuse me. Chapter 23. Once, when Verlin came home for a 3-day weekend, he brought with him a special treat for the children. Get your poles ready. Daddy's taking you fishing, he told them. With Verlin's help, all 11 of the kids, minus the babies, hurriedly got their willow poles ready. Onto each one, he tied a string with a bent nail at the end. I'll never forget their excitement and joy. Each wife washed their children's faces and put their sweaters on them so they wouldn't be cold riding in the back of the pickup on the way to the pond. They jumped into the truck and sat down holding their poles, waving goodbye to us as the truck headed for the dirt highway. That was our cue. Charlotte, Lucy, and I hurried into my house. I pounded large nails into each side of the doorframe. We hung a blanket there, leaving about 2 feet of space at the top of the doorway. I pulled the heavy cardboard boxes containing Verlin's surprise over close to me so I could easily reach into each one. Charlotte and Lucy took their places on the other side of the blanket, and we waited for the kids to return. Verlin drove up to the end of the lane. He then told the kids the best fishing was right at home. He turned around. He stopped in front of the house and helped the kids off the truck. He ordered the 3 older boys, Chad, Verlin Jr., and Mark, to form a line to hold their fishing poles, and then let the younger ones single file into the house. They all stood in front of the blanket with their poles, wondering what was going on. Verlin showed Andre how to cast his hook up over at the top of the blanket. He excitedly said, "Okay, here's Andre. Where's his fish?" I tied a toy onto the nail and carefully pushed it back over while Charlotte and Lucy eased it down so it wouldn't hit anyone. As it came over the blanket, Andre started screaming, "I got a truck! Look, I got a truck!" Oh, this is cute. This is cute. The whole group of kids ignited with anticipation, squealing and jumping, wanting to be next. Verlin got the next child ready. Here comes Mark. Where's his fish? I rummaged through the box and tied a metal airplane onto his line. The kids laughed and screamed with excitement. We let each one have a turn. Then Verlin repeated the operation all over again, realizing that it was taking too long. He finally reached behind the blanket and pulled out the big boxes, letting each child take a turn, choosing a toy until every doll, truck, and game was gone. Verlin bought the secondhand toys from the States. The kids were absolutely elated. These were the first real toys they've ever played with. Wow. Though a few of the toys had broken parts, like a bent wheel or a missing eye, it never occurred to our children that they weren't brand new. Long after the kids were grown, they still reminisce about the day they went fishing with Daddy. That's cute. That is cute. The loneliness I felt during Verlin's 3-month absences were often unbearable. I knew he had no choice but to keep on painting so he could support his families and also contribute to the church. We'd thrown in with Joel and his converts by this time, but I thought he could simultaneously meet some of his family's emotional needs if he took one of his wives with him to Vegas each time he went. I begged him to consider this, but he refused, saying he could save more money if he went by himself. Charlotte, Lucy, and I hated his long absences. When he came home for his first 3-day visits, we all ended up feeling rejected because we still had to share him. If it wasn't my turn when he arrived, I'd have to wait a day or two to be with him. The pain of his stopping in just to say hello before he went to be with another wife was worse than his being gone altogether. Still, his homecomings were always joyful in a way. Verlin was very thoughtful. He loved to bring home boxes packed with all sorts of used but useful things he had been given from the secondhand store or found cheap at yard sales. It always felt like Christmas when he did this. Among the assortments of items he surprised us with were bread tins, egg beaters, graters, plastic tumblers, odd dishes, and those toys for the kids. He got such a kick of seeing us all so happy. Shortly after one of these surprises, Betty dropped by to visit me. Look, Betty, Verlin brought me a new bra. The most uplifting gift I could ask for. I was so elated. This was my first new bra since I married Verlin. Now I wouldn't have to make my own. Verlin came in just as I was taking my new bra out of the box. Betty couldn't resist the chance to ask, how do you get the right size bra for each of your wives? Before he could answer, I blurted out, that's easy. He just tries Lucy's on his elbow, Charlotte's on his knee, and mine on his head. So she got the biggest ones, apparently. That's a funny little thing. Verlin had been gone a long time, and it was my night to have him first for a change. I was jubilant. It was a pleasure to have him sit at my table again. He always complimented me on my cooking, never failing to express his appreciation for me. After eating, he played with the kids, giving each a turn riding piggyback. He pranced around with them on his broad shoulders. Then he helped me tuck them into bed. When he tried to leave to go tell Charlotte and Lucy goodnight, I clung to him until he promised to hurry back quickly. Of course I will, he said. I know it's your turn. I'll be back as soon as I can to spend the night with you. Something tells me this is not going to be quick. I quickly took my bath in the round tin tub and then brushed out and braided my golden hair to set the mood for this special night. I hurriedly sprinkled the few remaining drops of my secondhand perfume onto the flour sack sheets made for the occasion. A freshly scrubbed pot was put in its place under the bed. A quart of fresh well water was on the stand. The kerosene lamp was turned down low. I waited and waited. I guess idleness really is the devil's workshop because he got me to take off my panties and my long nightgown and tuck them under the pillow. I jumped into the bed naked, pulling the perfume sheets over my bare shoulders. I lay flat on my back with only my head in view. in the dim, romantic lamplight, wearing nothing but my most seductive smile. I awaited Verlin's return. Would he ever be surprised? No, she's going to be surprised because it sounds like he's taking too long. How she had time to do all that when he's just supposed to go to say goodnight? As it turned out, the surprise was on both of us when he barged in a few minutes later with Charlotte and Lucy in tow. They all knelt down beside my bed for prayer. Verlin turned up the dim lamp and motioned for me to join them. All three of them folded their hands and waited for me to get. I'm just picturing this. She's naked and they want to pray. all three of them folded their hands and waited for me to get out the bed and down on my knees. I didn't move. Come on, Irene, get out for prayer, he ordered. I'm not in the mood for prayer, I said. Don't waste Charlotte and Lucy's time. Come on now, cut out the nonsense. Obey me. Kneel down here for prayer. He reached over to grab the sheet, but I was gripping it so tight that my knuckles turned white. When he couldn't budge it at all, his eyes met mine, and he knew. Disgusted, he just bowed his head and said, "Let us pray." Why is he disgusted with his wife for not having on clothes in her bed? He would always be disgusted with me because I don't sleep with clothes. But I'm just saying, why are you mad at your wife for doing that? And she could have prayed in the bed. You don't always have to be on your knees to pray. He must have thought it best to walk them both home. Immediately, they all disappeared, and I sprang out of bed. Oh, God, please help me out of this one. If Verlin finds out what I've done, he'll really reprimand me. In a flash, I put my panties on and nightie, and I was back in the bed, striking what I had hoped was an innocent pose. He walked in and said not a word. He just yanked the sheet off of me, throwing it clear across the room. He almost sputtered in surprise. "You weren't like that a few minutes ago," he said, pointing accusingly. What does it matter? Why is this an issue? Then you wonder why she was kissing the other man. Not excusing it. I'm just saying. You're damn right I wasn't. But did you really want me to jump out of bed and show them the naked truth? That's the end of that, because of course she jumps to the next topic. Lucy's hardest labor started without any warnings. Immediately, her pains were on top of one another. We sent a friend by truck to Spencerville to fetch her mother, Aunt Sylvia, to deliver the baby. In the meantime, I threw a plastic covering and a clean sheet onto Lucy's bed to prepare it for the delivery. Wincing and holding her stomach, she also told me where to get her Lysol, cotton, and sterilized rags. As the final preparation, I set out a freshly washed set of clothes for the new arrival. I ached inside for Lucy. She needed Verlin to be with her, but he was in Las Vegas, working to support us. He couldn't come home every time she or I or Charlotte had a child. Still, I felt a powerful foreboding, get it out, girl, that brought back memories of my own ordeal with Leah when she was born and died without him there. I didn't think any woman should be asked to lay her life on the line or be subjected to such excruciating pain without her husband there to see her through it. But patient Lucy was never one to complain. She hid her needs and fears very well indeed. Her cries brought me back to the situation at hand. I rubbed her back as she gripped the dresser. I wanted to cry with her. She didn't deserve to suffer so. Aunt Sylvia arrived with her shabby black bag, which she placed on the floor at the foot of the bed. She asked for a washpan full of warm water, and I fetched it from the kitchen. Hurriedly, she washed her hands with soap, instructing me to pour fresh water over them. Then she held her clean hands up in front of her as she turned to Lucy. "Get on the bed as soon as your pain stops. I'll need to check to see how far dilated you are." Charlotte took Lucy's children over to my house, where they wouldn't be able to hear her painful cries. When Charlotte returned, she rubbed Lucy's back gravely. "Is the pain over enough so that we can help you lie down?" she asked. Lucy nodded her head as Charlotte and I held her arms and led her slowly to the bed. I said it before. These wives, despite whatever issues they may have, show up for each other when they really need one another. Sitting on the side of the bed, Lucy lifted her long, thin legs onto the sheet as her mother placed a pillow underneath her shoulders. "Quick, I'm having another one," she cried. Charlotte and I each took a side near the foot of the bed. We held our arms firm, and Lucy clung to us as she bore down. Aunt Sylvia's fingers probed inside as Lucy arched her neck and let out staccato moans of agony. We could see the worry on Aunt Sylvia's face. I thought how difficult it must be for her to deliver her own daughter's baby. Charlotte and I sent fervent prayers to God, asking that this woman our husband chose to love would cease to suffer and soon and be delivered of a normal, healthy child. Lucy begged for sips of water as she perspired in the June heat. Then suddenly her water burst, thrusting a piece of umbilical cord out first. Charlotte, Aunt Sylvia, and I looked at one another alarmed. None of us had ever seen this happen. "Bear down, Lucy," her mother commanded. "Bear down long and hard. We must get this baby out as soon as we can." Lucy grabbed her stomach as the baby squirmed, kicking with tremendous violence. Sylvia touched Lucy's tummy. "The baby wants out," Lucy pushed hard. Instinctively, I let go of Lucy's hand, ran to the home of the closest neighbor I knew had a car. Without knocking, I yelled, "Come, Earl, please, please come. Take Lucy to the hospital. Something's wrong." "What is it?" he asked as we both jumped into his car. He sped down the gravel road and back to the house. "The cord came out first, and her contractions won't expel the baby." "Oh, God," Earl said, shaking his head. "We have to push that cord back inside before air gets into it, or the baby will start breathing." "I bet it's too late. Don't say a word," he ordered. We ran in, hearing unbearable moans from Lucy's room. Aunt Sylvia pushed the cord back in as Earl commanded. "Now move out of the way and let me carry Lucy to the car," he said. I ran ahead with a thick blanket and a pillow, and I spread them on the back seat for Lucy to lie down on. She cried out in pain as we pushed her frail body into place. Aunt Sylvia, holding her black bag, filled with sterilized rags and baby cloths, climbed in beside her. I sat next to Earl, and we frantically started towards Casa. Earl flew so fast down the narrow paved highway, we skipped right over the potholes. The speedometer rose quickly to 50, 60, 65 miles per hour. I pointed nervously at the gauge. Earl shook his head for me not to worry. The needle climbed to 75, then 85, then 90. My prayers were just about as loud as Lucy's cries as we raced the dangerous road to Casas. When we got there, Earl drove the car to the rear entrance of the clinic, and I ran inside to get a stretcher, but he snatched Lucy right up and carried her directly to the operating room. Dr. Hatch appraised the situation, then ordered Irene, "Have Earl drive you to the public swimming pool. Find Arturo, the anesthesiologist. Tell him not to take time to dress. Get him over here immediately." Earl rushed me over there, and I ran alongside the pool, scanning the bathers playing ball in the water. Each moment seemed an eternity. Finally, I spotted Arturo. How he matured since he had administered anesthesia to me years earlier from my appendectomy. "Arturo!" I waved my arms and I ran. "Arturo!" He spoke perfect English. "Yes, what can I do for you?" Dr. Hatch said, "Come as you are. It's a matter of life or death." He grabbed his towel and dried himself as he ran to a small bathing house and snatched up his clothes. "Please, God," I prayed as we dashed along the noisy, hurried steps. "Please, let it be over soon for Lucy's sake. Don't let her suffer." Arturo and I burst into the delivery room, expecting to hear Lucy's cries. Instead, she lay quietly on the table, covered to her shoulders with a green sheet. I realized that a nurse was working with an infant nearby. I looked at Lucy, shocked. "Did you have it?" Dr. Hatch interrupted my question. "I had to go in and pull it out. We couldn't wait for Arturo. It was coming placenta previa." "Oh. After birth, before baby. Lucy could have hemorrhaged if we waited any longer. I'm sorry to tell you, but the baby is dead." Y'all. Poor Lucy. She had an 8-pound girl, but it suffocated at home when it fought so violently inside its mother. Can't you do something? Give it mouth-to-mouth resuscitation, give it oxygen, give it artificial respiration, anything, I desperately pled. Dr. Hatch shook his head sadly. It's no use, Irene. There's nothing we can do. I was filled with rage. I wanted to scream at God. Lucy had already lost a baby, little Roland, who had lived for only 53 hours. Why hadn't he and my Leah been enough? Why did it have to happen to poor Lucy again? She opened her arms and I fell into them, the both of us sobbing. No grief in the world compares to the agony of losing a child, especially without your husband there to comfort you and mourn with you. How well I knew it. Wishing I could have shielded Lucy from it all, and all I could do now was share in her grief. Once I thought of her as my enemy, yet here we are now, united in sorrow and desperation. I held the lifeless baby, placing her one final time in Lucy's arms. She wept as she examined her chubby body. She's the prettiest child I've had. She's just beautiful. I know I'll have her again in heaven. She breathed inside me. I know it. And I'll have her again. Brigham Young said, unless a child breathes the breath of life, we couldn't claim it in heaven. She's my little Clara, Lucy declared. Take her home and prepare her for a decent burial. Earl and I left Lucy and Aunt Sylvia at the clinic with Dr. Hatch. I carried the lifeless little body out through the back entrance to the car. We hardly spoke during the 35-mile drive home. I sat wondering how I could take this bad news home to the family, especially those expectant kids. I unfolded the receiving blanket and gazed at Clara. She had beautiful dark hair, a perfectly formed mouth, tiny long lashes, I sighed. I dare hope this would be the last heartbreak we'd have to endure. We dressed the baby for burial in a nicely mended secondhand dress. I laid her out for viewing on top of Charlotte Singer's sewing machine cabinet and raised the window to allow a cross breeze to keep the baby's body cool. Donna, almost 7, wailed uncontrollably. She went up to where the baby was laid out, patting and kissing her, crying, "Wake up, baby. Wake up." She was in such despair. I pulled her away and had her lie down on Charlotte's bed, there in the same room. I begged her to settle down, but I finally had to leave her there crying hysterically because all the other crying kids needed to be fed in the kitchen. I had to hurry up so I could line the wooden casket Earl was making out in the yard. I was relieved when it seemed Donna finally quit her crying. I figured she fell asleep and I went back to check on her. I was flabbergasted to see her sitting in her little rocker with Clara in her arms, rocking her back and forth, quietly sobbing her little heart out. She wasn't able to accept the fact that the baby was dead. I found it most difficult to explain to her that Clara had gone to heaven, while her precious little body would now have to bury like we had to do with Leah. On September 30th, 1962, I gave birth to my daughter, Barbara. She was such a beauty, with dark hair, green eyes, and a smile that told you she was up to something. I delivered her at home with a neighbor's assistance. We all felt she was a special blessing from heaven, but Donna especially did. It had been 7 years since I had a girl. After getting stuck with 4 brothers in a row, Donna was overjoyed to finally have her own little sister. I didn't have to remind her that she could have the baby. Donna immediately claimed her, carrying her around like a doll. But she just couldn't understand why I wouldn't let her sleep with the baby at night. Don't lie, Mom. You gave her to me. I felt so bad. I let the baby lie next to Donna on a small cot while I watched cautiously until my older daughter fell asleep. A while later, when Donna awoke and realized I snatched her little sister, she happily joined me and 3 other sleeping kids in my bed. Though I always put the children to sleep in their own beds, they would all somehow manage to wake up in mine. They loved to listen to me sing and tell stories at night, especially when the wind was howling. Thunder and lightning would also bring them rushing into my room. My bed was a safe haven. There were always more kids than covers. Sometimes I didn't realize any of them had snuck in until I felt the wet spots in my bed. The children were none too happy when Verlin came to sleep with me on the occasional coveted night when he was in town and I popped up on his rotation list. Sometimes neither was Verlin. Once, when he and I had just gotten in bed and covered ourselves with a light blanket, my son Andre's kitten jumped onto the bed and frightened Verlin. He immediately tossed the kitten to the floor. The poor thing meowed and jumped right back up. No matter how many times Verlin threw it out of the bed, it came right back, insistent on sleeping with us. Finally, Verlin thought he made his point. The kitten disappeared. Much as I dislike cats, I commiserated with his desperation for a little love. After a sound sleep, I awoke early in the morning and put my arm around Verlin, hoping for a little extra attention before my turn was over. He rose up, intending to turn toward me. I cut my hand under his side in order to pull him into an embrace, but instead of pajamas, I felt fur. Without our knowing it, the kitten had quietly snuck back into the bed in his sleep. Verlin had accidentally rolled over on it. Oh no! Squishing the life out of the poor little thing. Verlin felt bad, but not as bad as Andre and the other kids felt. They cried buckets of tears as they parted with their kitty for burial in a cardboard box. To console them, Verlin dug the hole, buried the cat, and for the kids' sake, put a wooden marker on the grave. Knowing our neighbor had an abundance of kittens, we let Andre pick out another one the next day. And that is the end of that chapter. Whew, I wasn't expecting for it to turn into what it did. You guys let me know your thoughts. Until next time.